This happened a few weeks ago. I was 24 years old, and I was trying to get my life back on track. I was barely making ends meet at my job. I'd been in trouble with the law a few times over the last few years, and maybe I'd been partying a little too much. My house is falling apart, and not very well furnished, but slowly but surely, I'm getting my life back, and I'm proud of how far I've come. A few months ago, my friends and I got into a fight at a bar where we always hang out. One of my friends decided that it would be a good idea to go after the guy's girlfriend, and in my drunken state, I somehow found myself in the center of events. Long story short, the police got involved, and all hell broke loose. I decided it was time to move on, stop partying, and live a sober life. One Friday night, a friend of mine invited me to hang out. I didn't really want to go, but I thought I'd show my face and go. Turns out there were a few people there, and I met a girl I didn't know, and we hit it off immediately. A few days later, I asked her to meet me. I was looking forward to a night out as I was a bit bored of moving in a straight line. As I was getting ready, I heard a knock on the door, which was a bit strange because I had never had visitors before. I was embarrassed to show my shabby apartment to anyone, so I didn't expect anyone to come. To be honest, I was a bit annoyed, because I had agreed to meet them at a local restaurant at 8 p.m. and it was already 7:40 p.m. I didn't have time to deal with visitors. I pushed the door open a little bit and looked out. Nobody was there, and there was a bottle of wine on the table. Strange, isn't it? I mean, how did he know where I lived? I was seriously disappointed, though I took it lightly. I thought he might have heard it from someone, or he might have gotten lucky. But I was really disappointed. I had stopped drinking after the police fiasco, but since I'd been stewed up, I figured a glass of wine wouldn't hurt. Famous last words. After a few sips, I realized something was wrong. The room started spinning, and I felt myself losing control. The nightmare began. The walls are closing in, the shadows are dancing, and a great fear grips me. My head is all messed up. I'm staggering. I can't understand what's happening. Wine. Spiked wine. Panic sets in. My heart beats like a drum. I feel like I'm going crazy. I collapse and everything goes blurry. I can't believe my feelings. What was in that wine? Who left it at the door? Questions swirl around me, but I am paralyzed and can't find answers. In my foggy consciousness, I manage to crawl to the note next to the bottle. On the other side of the note, in shaky handwriting, it says, "My heart has stopped." I'm lying on the floor of my filthy apartment, with no clue as to who drugged me or why. Then it hits me. A random woman. The wine. It was all a trap. It was either her or someone else who wrote the note. This person knew where I lived and wanted to mess with me. When I realized I was walking into their trap, my fear went through the roof. And here's where it gets worse. As I lay there trying to figure things out and stuck, I heard footsteps coming from outside the door. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. Deep voices leaving threatening messages. I'll be back, but next time I'll make sure you don't hear me. My heart stopped. My fear grew even more when I realized that someone was watching me. Someone drugged me, and now they promised to come back. I lay on the floor paralyzed with fear, and an unknown threat haunted me. I still don't know who it is. The girl I met disappeared, so I knew she had to be involved somehow. It could also have something to do with the bar fight a few months ago. You never know when a seemingly ordinary night will turn into your worst nightmare. Wherever I go, I always look over my shoulder. I always lock the door, and I haven't touched my drink since. One day, I hope to solve this mystery. I stabbed my fork deep into my pasta, the TV blaring behind me. The clock is ticking, and as soon as I finish eating, my cell phone starts ringing. No catchy ringtone, just the usual buzz. I'm not one to jump on the phone, but there's something strange about this call. When I picked up, there was an eerie silence on the other end. No greeting, no noise, just emptiness. I was about to hang up, thinking it was a telemarketer or a wrong number, when a voice broke the silence. The voice was soft and calm, but it sent shivers down my spine. The caller said. My fork hung in the air and I fell silent. "Who are you? What do you want?" No answer, just silence. I tried to end the conversation, thinking it was a joke or a wrong number, but the voice started describing my every move. From closing the kitchen cabinets, to turning off the TV, to running my fingers through my hair. I was glued to the phone, feeling like a character in a twisted script. I'm already a mess, walking around the house, checking the windows and making sure all the doors are locked. But the voice continues, as if it's talking about my life. It's getting on my nerves. I try to ask who they are, but all I get in response are details of my behavior. They are with me, but I am alone. I begin to think that someone I know is picking on me, but how could they know so many details? Time passes and the voices continue to describe my every move and predict what will happen next. I look over my shoulder to see if anyone is looking out the window, but there's no one there. It's a quiet suburban neighborhood. And then it hits me. The tension, the anticipation, it's unbearable. It's like being trapped in a horror movie. But there's no creepy music, just the unsettling silence of our house. I tried to distract myself, put on music, turned on the lights, but the feeling of being watched was unshakable. Finally, as I was sitting there, I heard a voice and my heart started pounding. There is no one waiting for me. I was home alone, and then the inevitable happened. There was a knock at the door. It's a slow knock on the door, and it sends shivers down my spine. I freeze and stare at the door, as if it were a portal to another world. The voice on the phone chuckles and says, "I shouldn't keep visitors waiting. Who's there?" For a moment, I wonder if I should open the door. I gather my courage and approach the door, and just as I put my hand on the knob, the voice on the phone disappears. The knocking continued, each time echoing in my empty house. I stood there, phone in my hand, my heart pounding, wondering who was on the other end of the line and what they wanted. I'm Derek, a 19-year-old marketing student. I'm going to share a crazy incident that happened to me at my parents' house. My parents built me my own room above the garage and asked me to keep an eye on the house while they were away. The basic instructions I was given were to close the curtains and turn on the lights when it gets dark. Typical parenting, right? Little did I know it would be a night I would never forget. I was in the room above the garage with my headphones on, listening to Metallica. At night, I would completely ignore my parents' advice to close the curtains and turn on the lights. Who needs it when you've got Enter Sandman in your ears? But something caught my attention. I saw a flickering light from inside my parents' house. I took off my headphones and squinted my eyes, trying to make sense of what was happening. No one was supposed to be in this house. Leaning over, I looked out the window and peered out in the semi-darkness. Flashlights were sparkling inside my parents' house. I panicked and couldn't look away. Someone was there, and it couldn't be him. That's when my instincts kicked in. Did you call the police? I didn't. Did I reach for my gun? No. Instead, I did the stupidest thing. I could get into my parents' house from my room, so I crept down the stairs, trying to be a hero. As quietly as possible, I opened the side door and stepped out into the hallway. I heard a sound, like someone moving. With my heart pounding, I looked into the living room and saw someone in the dim light, bent over, looking for something. I was terrified. I should have called the police, but my mind was on vacation. I hid behind the hallway wall. My hands were shaking, and I could barely breathe. He was completely oblivious to my fear and went through my parents' things. I cowered in the shadows, my heart beating wildly, louder than the music I was listening to. The intruder froze and slowly turned his head towards me. Then he grinned. It was an evil, twisted grin that gave me goosebumps. He didn't look like a random thief. It looked like someone who knew me, someone who took pleasure in the horror he caused. With my heart pounding, I ran out of there and called the police from a safe distance. When the police arrived, the house was empty. There was no sign of the intruder, just a lingering sense of dread. So now I am deeply shaken. I cannot shake the feeling that someone broke into my parents' house and did it just to watch me squirm. From now on, If my parents ask me to do something, I will, and I will never underestimate the fear that lurks in the familiar shadows.